Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Leonard Paul, and this is the School of Video Game Audio question and answer that we're going to be doing today with Ricardo Pujol. Thanks so much for joining us, Ricardo. It's great to have you with us. Exactly. We're on video. This is great. And yeah, I will basically keep an introduction short. Basically, Ricardo, he works at Halfbrick currently as an audio designer, and what he's going to do over the next few minutes is basically give an introduction about himself, and then what we'll do is we'll take some questions from the folks on YouTube. So yeah, and we'll run for about an hour or so. So yeah, thanks again for joining us. Cool.
Thank you, Leonard, for the invitation, and thanks everyone who joined. Yeah, my name is Ricardo Pujol. I'm originally from Venezuela, uh, but I moved to Chile when I was 16. I always knew that I wanted to study audio engineering. I started making music when I was 12 with Reason and Fruity Loops and Coolity, those old school tools. So when we moved to Chile with my family for political reasons, I had the opportunity to study audio engineering there. So I went through the school, 2 years of high school, then 5 years of audio engineering, where we had different subjects as on the technological side, mixing, music, also some of the business side as well. And when I was almost finished with the university, I was looking for an internship, and there was a studio that created music and sound design for advertising. So I applied for an internship there, even though they were not looking for it. I just went to the studio and said, "This is what I do." I already had a little bit of experience freelancing, making music for small projects online. Some of them were free, as I bet many of you guys have been doing. But I think that's a necessary starting point in most cases, just to do some things for free to prove that you can do things and also get some experience. But I went to that studio with a little, very small portfolio, but they liked it and they gave me an internship. And next step is that I got hired by that studio and went there for 5 years working, making only music for advertising. In total, I made about 1,000 music tracks, short tracks, 30 seconds to 1 minute, 2 minutes music tracks, which is a big part of my portfolio. And of course, that was super helpful, even though it's advertising and it's quite simple because in that industry, what you do is mostly copying other stuff without getting legal problems. But yeah, it's a good environment to get some to get to listen different stuff that's out there, what is sounding, what different styles, variety of styles. But yeah, after 5 years, I realized that the industry was in a big decay because of these websites like Audio Jungle and Music Stock. I don't know. So it wasn't as profitable as before. The agencies didn't need music anymore, custom music, so they were just going for, $100 tracks already created, pre-made tracks in these websites. And I realized that yeah, that business was gonna die. So I thought, okay, what I'm gonna do next? I need to figure out what I'm gonna do. I don't wanna let my career die with this industry. So I thought, well, I've always liked video games, and it seems like it's an industry that's growing. That was like 5 years ago. And on the other hand, one of the reasons that made me make the decision of changing is that it has that technical side that is hard, and a lot of people is scared of doing hard things. So I thought like, yeah, maybe the competition there is like it's less than in music. Like a lot of people can do music, but not a lot of people is willing to understand how to implement it in a game, maybe do a little bit of code or understand like the logic behind programming or audio video game engines. So I joined the School of Video Game Audio with first I did the WISE demo reel course, which was fantastic because it was my first experience doing implementation of audio in video games. I already had experience with sound design and music, but this was the first time I could do some implementation myself. Then I wanted to take it a step further, and I think it was 1 year later or something, I did the Unity 3D course, which I think it was harder because it involves, there are more tools in Unity, and there's a lot, or a little bit of C sharp as well, which was completely new for me. But yeah, I think that definitely paid off because, as I said before, not many people, especially musicians, they just don't want to play the guitar. No, they don't want to spend hours in front of a code trying to figure out why it's not working. Um, yeah, so I did that course. I got some freelance jobs in different parts of the world, using internet, freelance websites, trying to always give the best I could, um, try to deliver the best quality, sometimes not charging as much as I would have liked, but just needed to get the most experience I could. The the most engaging the game was, the more I wanted to work on it. Some very very beautiful games that, even though they didn't pay as much as I could have liked, but because their budget was lower, but there were some very good experiences where I could actually do the things that I learned in the School of Video Game Audio in real life, in the real industry. So I kept working as a freelancer in video games, and also I kept working a little bit with advertising because I already had a name in Chile for 5 years working there. So even though it was much, much less than the previous years, there was still some music that needed to be created. But actually, nowadays, I think it's 100% pre-made music. So I think I jumped out of the ship just in time. Um, so yeah, I kept working as a freelancer, trying to grow LinkedIn. Um, I made my website, and trying to making connections. And finally, I got a job offer from Halfbrick 2 years ago. After all this freelance adventure, and yeah, I've been working there for 2 years. It's a very very exciting company to work in. Um, I'm actually using all the knowledge that I have learned through the years, through the experience, and the school as well. Uh, yeah, I know that one of the reasons they liked my job had to do with all this huge amount of tracks that I made in the past, which show that I can make music in many different styles. So yeah, been working there. We have a lot of games going. Some of the most famous ones that are already out there, for sure many of you know, is Fruit Ninja and Jetpack Joyride. But yeah, it's exciting, and I'm here now, willing to answer any question that you guys might have, or you, Leonard.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks so much for the introduction. And yeah, it's great to see people hopping on the stream. So I guess what you can do, for those, I'm pointing here at my little YouTube screen that shows, people that are online. Hello, we have, I guess, at least one student and an alumnus, and yeah, some other folks as well, which is great because the stream is open. And so, yeah, feel free to ask your questions on the YouTube chat, and then what I'll do is I'll just mirror those questions over to you. But I think one of the themes, there's sort of two things that I kind of picked out of there. One of the things is that, like, from your work, the reason why you were featured at the School of Video Game Audio for your Wise Reel was just because it was intense. You have an intensity about your work that just simply comes through. And that's like, that is, it's basically parallel to passion. It's just this thing that you can see it just comes off of, the work that you produce. It, I think, is infectious for people to look at, and they're just like, wow, like, you really put all your work and effort and focus into not only doing like the audio side of things, which you already knew how to do quite well, but then you also really did a lot on the implementation side, which I think also shines through really well, which is very attractive for, basically to work with companies. So I think that that's something that is important for, people on the stream to understand that it is a lot of work. And I know you might not necessarily remember the amount of work that you put into it, but usually, I mean, I'm probably, we have about 120 hours or so that's sort of allocated, and I think from the work that one can see with your reel, you put a lot more into that. You found like voice talent. You spent a lot of work on like the production side of it, making sure that it looked nice. Like we're talking about that sort of advertising side that you're very well versed with, and so presentation is super important. And yeah, I also think that the implementation side is important too. So it was great to see that. Yeah, like those things are still impressive. Like the reel is still, I think, impressive to this date, just because of the amount of focus that you put into your work. So yeah. As far as the other thing that I think came out, so there's, like you were saying, throughout the process of, when you were applying to places, you also said like you've been building this basically like portfolio, of your work, and to basically demonstrate your talents over the years. And it's great to hear you say how that has helped you, the thousand tracks that you've made, in the past, and that you can basically just sort of fire those out. And it's really showing like a level of craftsmanship that a lot of people are like, no, 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 I do music because, I feel like this and I do this. And that is another way to see it. And I'm not saying you're not an artist. I'm a composer as well, but I'm also saying that there is a real advantage to people that just go like, yeah, I can make, like a track that is, within these guidelines relatively quickly, and get it sort of, within one or two revisions. And so I think that's a real
Mm.
great skill to have. Do you find that you use your music skills at Halfbrick these days?
Yeah, definitely,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
Nice.
Creating music almost every week. I have some music work there.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess, oh, that was the other thing that I was curious about, is that you were saying that, yeah, like when you're sort of building up your, sort of, I guess, growing your career, that you started out with doing sort of like unpaid or low paid projects. How did you choose which ones, you were going to work on, and which ones you were like, nah, I'm not going to work on that
Yeah, well, probably I didn't
one?
have the best uh, method to do that, so I was kind of like accepting everything I could.
Right.
I'm talking when I was 20 or something like that, where you
Mm-hmm.
don't really. I was starting university, so I mean, if it was unpaid, I really
Mm.
wanted it to be. I didn't take every unpaid work, definitely
Yes.
no.
Yeah.
But if I was gonna take an unpaid work, it had to be something that I liked, that it looked good, or where I could see that I could improve any of my skills.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I would definitely not have taken unpaid work that I was not gonna be passionate about. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no. But yeah, some other like cheaper ones, because I mean I was studying, I didn't have any income, so why not? Like working for 10, $15 an hour, creating music for games, even if it's an ugly game that I know is not gonna get anywhere. But I mean, it's gonna be part of my portfolio until I have something better.
Yes.
And if I can learn something while I'm creating that game, or maybe make a connection that even though he makes games that are not the best, are gonna give me a small income during 1 or 2 years, why not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess that leads us to our first question from Christian. Hello and good morning. How did you build a network of indie game devs to find indie games to work on?
Hmm. I was, well, first I used a lot of these freelance websites like
Mm-hmm.
Upwork, Freelancer. The one that worked the most for me was Upwork. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very hard to get your first job there because you are like, you don't have any credit.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody has worked with you. But once you start getting some work, and that's why I think it's important to work on small things, no matter if they are not well paid. Because if you do a good job, you're gonna get good reviews, and then that's just gonna be like it's a snowball. So people see that you're good, and then they hire you more. And it's like that. And on the other hand, I traveled a lot during my trainees, and everywhere I went, I was just like making notes of all the game studios, and it's very hard because it's calling, being rejected a lot of the times because people don't really care. They don't need an audio person. But even if only one out of 50 answers your and give you a work, that's a good starting point. You don't have to think that it's the end of your career, is or you're gonna get stuck there. It's just the beginning. And yeah, any starting point is good. The important thing is just to s- to start
Yes.
making music and making sounds and meeting people.
Yeah, and like you said, also doing the implementation side because you did the more difficult, like Unity course with that, which does focus on the basically the non-middleware, use of trying to make a game in Unity. So yeah, using C sharp is definitely sort of like a bit of a, like
Mm.
not full 180, but it's definitely a different mindset. And a lot of people they don't make it. Like I do know of there's just students that take that course and they have a hard time. I try to make it as as kind of as fun as possible, but at the same time I don't try to make it still has to be useful within the industry, so there's still a lot of information in there that will you know it takes a while to get your head around. And so I guess one question might be like how as a, primarily as a composer and also as a sound designer, how did you approach like learning that, like the implementation side of it? Like how did you get through that, particular process and
Mm.
learn those techniques?
Yeah, as you said, it's not easy to get your way around it, but once you know it, it's like very logical. I remember the first times that I started to look into what is programming. It was 4 years after I started working in this advertising company when I realized that, okay, this is not going to last forever. So I just looked for very, very basic programming stuff like um, or object-oriented programming, what it is, and courses, online courses. And it took me, I guess, like 2 years until I arrived to the Unity course. So I didn't know how to code, but I kind of understood what it is about.
Mm-hmm.
And well, when we were doing that course with you, Leonard, I think that was like my full-time job. Like doing that
Yes.
with the same with the Wise Demo Reel is during those 3 months. That was my most important task, and I had other things to do, but my main goal was to get like the best out of it that I could, because yeah, it's like finding a job is a job, and you have to put the weight of to it that it has, because it's gonna help you in the future um, to find the job that you want. But that's why I think it's important to yeah, to put the most effort you can during the production of your portfolio.
Yeah, and it seems like you also have like a kind of a curiosity about it as well that I think some people, because like on one hand, you're motivated by, I need to get work and I know that this particular skill
Mm.
is important for work, but you also had a curiosity from the, like the actual, like like a deep curiosity where you asked a
Yeah, yeah.
lot of questions. And like, yeah, you're not joking when you're saying that you did it full time, because that's the thing is that with the school, that we recommend, like if people finish the course, it's 120 hours, like I was saying, over 2 months. That's sort of the minimum kind of amount of time. But for you, I think that you were putting like double that, if not more, especially at the end when we are doing the demo reel work to go back and forth, to basically, yeah, like double down on that and really dig into it and get the most out of it that you could. And I think that that's kind of what separates you from a lot of other people. I'm not just saying students, I'm saying just like people in the industry. It's just the way that it works. A lot of people are very used to having sort of an easier time coming in, and they're like, oh, yeah, I can do this, I can do this. And then with my course, our course, because I have other people helping me at this point, but with the school, I would much rather have people like, find out how difficult it is in the course. And hopefully, before the course is over, ask me a lot of questions and also ask, Jordan as well, to basically ask as many things as possible because I want to have people succeed in the industry. But at the same time, my job as an educator is not to motivate. And that was a great thing with you is that you're motivated. And
Mm.
so, yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah. I
been,
guess with the
Yeah.
with the curiosity thing that you mentioned, it's actually true, and I
Hmm.
think it's probably because after 5 years creating music every day, there were some weeks that I even had to create three music tracks. Of course, the mixing and the mastering was not great, but it's just like so much music that I kind of like wanted to try something new,
Hmm.
and I can't stress enough how satisfactory was to work in a code during 3 days and it worked. When it
Yes.
worked, is super satisfactory. So it's quite different to music because this is subjective. Like nobody can. Some people can tell you, okay, I like this, I don't like this, but a code is gonna work or it's not gonna work. So that kind of like straight method of getting things done. I think I was quite curious on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We have a question from Mark. He's asking, hi, how long did it take you to really get a good understanding of using Wise after or while taking the course at the school?
Yeah, I think during the course, probably among the 2 months that it took me, when we finished the course, I think I was really understanding everything that we went through. Of course, there were some tools that we didn't touch,
Hmm.
and yeah. On the other hand, I haven't yet used Wise in the real industry,
Hmm.
but it's a special case because I know it's a very widely used tool. But it's just we don't use it. We are starting to try some prototypes with it, but yeah, my only experience with Wise was in the course, and I felt that in 2 months, 3 months was enough. Especially because we didn't have to call the events; it was like easy. Like it was only Wise.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, and I do that on purpose. I try to limit, because what can happen is that you can be like, well, there's also the Unreal project or the Unity project, or, in the case of Cube, it was actually C++. And to open that up, like when I started the course, because my background is computing, that I was just like, oh, it'd be great to have students like, just throw them a bit of stuff and like see if they can compile it. But honestly, it ended up being more. It put people off more. It was kind of like, it's just like, okay, and today we're gonna run like 10 kilometers, and people that are there are just like, okay, you know. So
Yeah.
it's as I've worked on the course over the years. I mean, I started teaching like at this point over 20 years ago, and over time, I found that it's much better to start out soft as far as like, basically
Mm.
reaffirming people as they're starting out to say, like, you did this well, you did this well, and then maybe like you could improve this. Whereas people that are more experienced, it's just like, look, I don't tell them like, oh, hey, good, you did this. It's just like people that are more experienced don't want to hear that. It's just like, just tell me the stuff that I need to, objectively and sometimes subjectively need to work on. So, anyways, as far as the Wise course, it has been sort of smoothed out over time. And then also the Audio Kinetic has added like their whole courseware, the Wise 101, the 201, the 251, and then 301, which is all great to integrate into the course. So that also helps me so that I can focus on helping people, you know, uh, really learn the details of the program and the environment and implementation and sound design instead of spending all this time like maintaining like educational content. So that's actually been really
Mm.
good on the Wise side of things. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And as far as I mean, this is it's a tricky question, but I do get this question from time to time. People will be like, well, I could take your course or I could do the Wise certification. And my answer for that is a bit sideways because there are some job posts that do require, or at least they ask for WISE certification. But I'll also say that for almost everybody that I've talked to in the industry, they're like, well, if you have a good demo reel, like within the technology that they're looking for, then that's more than enough. It's actually kind of better. Usually I've found that, yeah, certification is helpful in companies that are maybe smaller or that are in countries where there's just less of a vocabulary of people using Wise, so they just want to know that you have that sort of as a basic thing. But most students that finish the Wise course and exactly do the real, they can do the certification like the Wise 101 is certification quite easily, within a couple of days basically. So
Mm. Yeah.
anyways,
At
yeah.
this we don't have a. uh, we went through our hiring process not long ago,
Yeah, yeah.
and what I can say is that, well, we're not requiring, we did not require any certification because we are actually not using Wise as the main tool now.
Mm-hmm.
So what I can say is, like, from a hiring standpoint, it looks much more important to have a good portfolio than any kind of certification. So if you can have both, that'll be great. But I will personally look at the portfolio first,
Yeah.
because that also shows some. It shows more. It shows the dedication you put into it, your creativity, how is the sound and music that you create, and yeah, the certification is just like a check.
Yeah, yeah, and also that it's something that some companies don't know, but the certification is actually it lags behind the current version of Wise by at this point about 2 years, which is actually kind of makes it difficult to teach because in a way because we have the new version of Wise, which is like that sort of recommended one. Then they also currently they have the beta, which some students download, but that's actually like, we shouldn't be using that one. It's just to show the feature set of what's coming down the pipe. And then there's also the certification version of Wise. So it can be very confusing for people that are not used to running multiple versions of a piece of software. Like it's just like, I just use like, Ableton. I don't use like Ableton 11 and then 7 and then 9, So anyways, it can be a little bit tricky that way. One question I have is a follow up to the hiring one is that yeah, when you're hiring, like what kind of things do you see that are submissions to your company that are kind of like common mistakes and like easy things to fix, and also like what are you looking for when you're hiring both? Say let's say we'll start out with a junior position, but then maybe also if you can comment maybe for other people that might be joining the stream that are looking to senior roles as well.
Yeah, there were quite a lot of submissions that didn't really meet any of the criteria we were looking for. I'll say probably the biggest mistakes are not giving a custom cover letter, like all
Mm.
those little things that show that you have interest in the company. I think those are important, because if I read something and it can be read by someone at Ubisoft or Eidos or wherever, and it's gonna be the same, it shows that you're just like copy pasting. It doesn't show like a dedication. And even though if you have to do it for 10 companies that you're applying for, just take the time and do it, because it shows that you are putting the time to that. It does. I know it doesn't mean that you are super fan of our company, but it shows that you're putting the time to show that you're willing to work hard, because it's working hard writing a different cover letter for every company. Other mistakes is just unmatching profiles to the position. Uh, People that didn't have the experience, and then they just made a submission anyway. So it's basically pointless because they didn't have any of the skills we were requiring. Also, broken links, or yeah, they say, okay, here's my portfolio, and it's a website, and that guy, for example, made graphic design, websites, and music, and it's like, I mean, we were looking for strictly for music portfolio and audio design portfolio, but if you put the same link in both of those fields and it's not pointing to the thing I'm asking for, it shows a little bit of an unorganized way of doing things. And I think that's important when you have a lot of submissions pending. One little thing like that is enough to just dismiss it, you know. Um, yeah, broken links, or some people was not polite, and that's not
Ooh,
good. Also, uh, yeah, I think maybe those ones.
yeah.
Or if we asked for a portfolio with music, and it had only 2 or 3 tracks, almost in the similar styles, it's like, I mean, it's not bad, but if you should probably get a little bit more experience on to fit the role, especially, this person could have fit the role in some other position somewhere else, but just, yeah, try to make sure that you are fitting the role, or at least you are showing your best work in order to demonstrate that you're going to fit the role.
Yeah, yeah. And for that particular role, that role is interesting because it was a combination. It sounded like it was more music heavy and then a bit of audio design and maybe not so much implementation. Like, you know, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of more like, as you say, like audio designer and music composition,
Mm-hmm.
because we're using Unity, our own tool, audio tool. So the implementation is something that anyone with some Unity experience, which is something that it's definitely like a default that we were looking for as well, could pick up quickly. So we were not looking for Fmod or Wise or any other specific like middleware implementation skills.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so like one thing that happens with students is that they're composers. This is the typical thing is that they're composers and then they're like, well, I just want to add like, sound design to sort of my list of things that I can do. And for me, I sort of came at it in a similar way. I was not an, sound designer first. But the thing that for people that are within the industry that are sound design heavy, a lot of the times they do not like having any music in the reels. So I'm curious, like for something where you're sort of submitting on music, sound design, and implementation, is there a way to do like three like mini reels, I guess, to exhibit like those, or would you prefer those to be one in one, or like what's your approach there?
Yeah, yeah, a good question. Like definitely the position we were looking to fit was rare in the sense that it needed to have a little bit of these three areas. But yeah, I mean, in smaller companies like ours, that's the case. If you go to bigger, they're gonna have 10 composers that only make music and then people that mix the music. But that's not the case in a company like ours, which is like way smaller than AAA games. But yeah, about having different reels, I think that's super helpful and super important. That was what I did when I was looking for work, and that was something that I also liked to see in the submissions we had, because you want to have like a, for example, another mistake that other people made is like, this is my reel, and then the reel has some audio and some music, and we didn't know if the music was made by him or only the audio, and others were the opposite. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it's quite important to have a like a, the way I did it was like this. I had my Wise demo reel where I had like, of course, the audio design, music, and implementation, but it was more focused on Wise. Also the Unity demo reel, which also had some music, some sound, and but was heavily more like leaning into the Unity side. And I also had a reel that I made with the best music tracks that I made for advertising. So that was only music.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought like, okay, I had like 30 minutes of content. I cannot just share this. They're not gonna see it. So I gathered the best of the best that I could in there, and I made a 3 minutes reel, which actually had it was separated in like 1 minute of audio design, 1 minute of music, and 1 minute of implementation. So
Right.
just like getting the best of all the other reels, and it was quite intense because it's like a lot of things happened really fast. But yeah, I think it's a good idea in order to like that's your first card to show the 3 minutes reel or 2 minutes or something very short that in these times people is not willing to spend 10 minutes just looking at something potentially boring. So try to make something very engaging, and if it clicks with the person, then you can show them, or down in the cover letter or whatever your proposition, you can say, and this is a more extended version of the audio design, 15 minutes, whatever you want, and this is the music I have
Nice.
created. I had all my music in the website, and it's like, obviously nobody listened to that, but
Yeah.
it was there, and it was not the first thing that I showed, because nobody was going to listen. But I showed like the best cuts of the best commercials, the most powerful brands, and then if you want to hear the rest, here's the rest. And I
Mm-hmm.
think yeah, that's a good approach because no one is going to look at something too long at
Yeah.
first.
And I would say that as a person reviewing it, that you would also go like, well, when somebody spends the time to not only make a custom cover letter, to make a custom presentation to the role, and they also, number one, value your time as an evaluator on the other side, that the evaluator just goes like, well, thank you, because like, yeah, I'm having to churn through a bunch of these, and the fact that you went through your 1,000 tracks and picked out like 1 minute worth to show
Mm.
me shows that like you care and understand the process on the other side. And then yeah, like if they want, they can dive into the pool of like 1,000 tracks. But I think that it's a huge thing as far as like applying to roles. Yeah, no, that's a
Yeah,
great answer to that question. Yeah. A
at least
question.
from the hiring. Oh yeah, just one last thing.
Yes,
That
yes,
I
yes.
think that at least from the hiring point of view, uh, it's very important the quality of your work. But if you don't know how to show it, it doesn't matter. So I wouldn't say the 50% attitude and 50% quality, because if the attitude is amazing but the quality is bad, yeah. But it has a very very important way to have a good attitude and willing to like make the things easier for the person that's hiring. Just think that that person is going to have hundreds of curriculums waiting there. You need to yeah, as you said, like take care of their time, like make sure that you're not spending time and you're showing them what they want to see. And
Exactly.
hopefully if it's good, you most certainly are gonna at least be shortlisted and get the
Yeah.
job, hopefully.
And even, like talking about that as a process, like where you've described where you apply to like many different companies, you're saying like 50 at a time, but spending the time to like, make directed, specific applications so that it's only for that company, and like, refining that, and then getting hopefully to like, where you get shortlisted, and then maybe to where you get inside the company. And then the funny thing that we often, well, it's not funny, but the thing that we often don't talk about, like with the Q&A side of things, is actually when you're inside the company, those skills are still important. It's still very, very important to be able to display what you're working on in a clear and focused manner to the team, because a lot of the time people within the game company, they're busy, but at the same time they want to know, like it's very helpful to do like internal, I call it sort of marketing, or just sort of like visibility, so that people know what you're working on. And quite honestly, I could do better like when I'm working within a company, I get very busy on certain things, and I need to fix these bugs, but then sometimes I just forget that I need to also, connect with the rest of the team to show like, hey, I know that you folks are doing all this great graphic stuff, which is often, easier to sort of show versus like the audio stuff, which, I really need to spend more time on. So just saying that like that process that you're going through just to get shortlisted and maybe get a role, it doesn't just end there. So yeah.
Mm. Exactly.
Yeah.
And
So
that's the reason why it's important.
yeah.
Because in during the work days, you want to have that same attitude of being proactive and try to be very very organized and uh, meticulous with the things you would as yeah, it's just like the first impression you get from someone hopefully is going to translate into the work. And yeah, that should be in most of the cases.
Yeah. Yeah, we have more questions coming in, which is great. So, yes, people over here, or I'm looking at my YouTube screen once again. Make sure to ask questions in the YouTube chat. I see, yeah, there's a fair amount of people. If you haven't asked a question yet, feel free to ask a question. And then I'll ask this one here. This was from Christian as well. It looks like Halfbrick works on mobile games. Have you noticed any significant differences between working on mobile versus, computer/console games?
Yeah, well, the fun thing is that I have never worked on console or PC games.
Uh-huh.
I worked on a PC game actually, but one was very indie, very small. Uh, yeah, I guess that the difference go more towards the device itself, the target platform. So you want to make sure that, I mean, in most cases, people don't play mobile games with good headphones. Um, they just play it with the audio from the phone. So that's something to consider. I'll say that that's the only thing I could say in my experience on PC, which is not huge.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my own experience with the titles that I've worked on, I haven't worked on a lot of mobile ones, but the thing that I've found is that I've worked on titles that are both mobile and sort of like whatever for smaller platforms, and then also for desktop, and it's sort of from the game itself. A lot of the times, one needs to make the decision: do you basically orient your design towards like the mobile, sort of the weaker platforms, or do you orient it towards the top platforms, or you try and do a balance? And that is actually like an open topic that depends on the game itself. And so I would say that it's good to ask, like if you're in the program, anyways, it's good to ask me a lot of questions because it really comes down to the details. It's not really something that I could
Mm,
necessarily speak about in general. If anything, you orient the design to where the company will think the most players are. So most games,
mm,
even like console, like desktop games, sure, there's like 5.1, maybe there's 7.1, maybe there's Atmos, but at the same time, the stereo mix is super important because, you know, as far as things are now, that tends to be where most of the players are at, are stereo. And so, like you're saying with mobile, it's important to know that people will be playing over, like, almost like functionally a mono, like
mm.
source, and just listening to it. So things need to be able to translate that way. And also, yeah, you have to make your content smaller too to fit on mobile,
Yeah,
which is often less of an issue. I guess that's a good question to ask. Like, how do you have any tricks for that? For like basically like optimizing so that you get your audio content across on mobile so that it sounds good, but it's small too.
yeah. I guess that when a sound doesn't need to be stereo, don't make it stereo. Just make a mono file. Or you can do it in Unity as well. Just mix down to mono. And there are some settings that they use for the sounds in mobile games, depending on the function they have. But I don't remember now. I need to look at the documentation, but I know that there's some information online. Like it's different the load type for a music track that's gonna loop in the background than for a sound that triggers only once each 10 levels.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a few things like that. There's also some compression settings you have in Unity to that you can get to a you can definitely decrease the the amount of kilobytes a sound is without making the sound distorting it too much or degrading the audio quality too much. So yeah, when you port sounds in Unity, you have a few options in the WAV asset that you can use to maximize the space, which is yeah definitely another important part of difference between mobile games and PC or anything
Yeah. And
or
so,
console.
yeah, I guess, yeah. So for Christian, if you're looking into details to do that with Wise, the Wise 251 course, that's free. You don't have to be certified in it. It goes into details about that using the Wise Adventure game. So that might be something that you want to look at. Cool. We have more questions, and so yes, please ask more questions. We've got about still a quarter of an hour left to go, which is great. And Mark asks, is it better to wait until you have a demo reel to start applying for jobs, um, or not?
Yeah, well, I think so. Like in a way that if you don't have it, it's very hard to show your skills. Like, yeah, that's why I think that you have to start from very from the bottom. I didn't have my final demo reel, but just after like 3 years of working, at first I had some reels and some stuff that I could show, but it was not at the level that the companies required. So you need to have something to show, and I think that that's actually something very good with the School of Video Game Audio, that you can get a nice reel where you show your creativity, you show what you do without needing to apply for a job and get the job and do all the thing. It's just basically, yeah, it's a good opportunity, and yeah, I think it's important to have a demo reel, or even if it's not a demo reel, a portfolio,
Yeah.
somehow websites or SoundCloud, Bandcamp, whatever that you can show what you do. YouTube, Vimeo.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's I try to continually adjust the what I think I want to, convey to the students over time. The industry changes quite quickly. So I do not only just stay in the industry to see how things are going, but also I talk to people in the industry. I talk to a lot of students, especially when they transition like yourself from like looking for work or like, doing freelance work to like, really landing somewhere and finding a job that they're really happy with and then asking, like these detailed questions so that I can find out what's kind of effective at this time in the industry. Like I don't just sort of like, go like, oh yeah, it used to be done this way, like, in the late 90s. It's just, it's important to stay on top of what is current and what is important. And one of the things that I'm hoping to add is to actually convey sort of more of my business skills and also just general business skills to students in a more formal course. I do this, with students that ask. So for those of you, similar to Mark and others, Vincenzo as well. I think that there might be other students here. Sorry, I can't get all, I'm not sure about all the names, but yeah, basically for any students that are on the stream right now, yes, just you can ask me directly about like anything to do with the business side, like, contracts or whatever. One thing that students are doing more of these days is just to send out, works in progress. So even as they're working on the reel, I've had like, there was Mark Dawson that had sent out basically just like he had finished like most of the reel, but he had a really solid like 20-second chunk and he put it out on Twitter and like people loved it. They were just like, "Oh my goodness, this is great." It was, using Unreal 5, the Valley of the Ancient game, which looks and sounds, well, in his case, sounds really great. So that's a sort of a different thing than when I was more so applying to work, is that I finished my reel, put it out, whereas now it seems like you can put out basically updates and kind of like build your brand. Yeah, I don't know, Ricardo, how have you found that process?
Mm, yeah, well, I think that it can be a different path for everyone
Mm-hmm.
uh, because I understand that for this person it worked, but that's not something that I would have personally done. I
Mm-hmm.
would have preferred to have everything complete and dedicate
Yes.
the time just to that. I was not applying to jobs when I was doing the reel
Mm-hmm.
because, as I say, it was like my job and opportunities are gonna come. You don't need to apply to every opportunity if you don't feel you're ready. Like once you're ready and you because you're just gonna lose your time. Sometimes, well, this person did well, but yeah, I'll just recommend to put the most effort you can on your reels because that's a very powerful card that you can show, and just not don't stick to the things that everyone used to do often. I remember that the one of the examples in the Why is Demo Real is to use the switch to change the footsteps depending on the materials.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's cool. And that shows that if you can do that, you can do it in some more creative things. So I think it's really cool if you can just like think a little bit out of the box and try to use the same tools that you are being taught in the school, but in your own stuff or being creative. Yeah, that definitely is gonna make your reel stand out from the others.
Yeah. The way that I try to approach that with students these days is that I ask them what behaviors, what, things that they want to have implemented. And then I can help them a little bit with some ideas of like, oh, you could try it this way or you could try it that way.
Okay.
But not a lot of students get there. A lot of students are just like, I just need to get my sounds in and like I need to get this thing so that the whatever it's not breaking all the time or my sound banks this and that. So it is a tricky thing to get to that point of creativity with implementation, but it is something that's that extra layer of polish once again from your both your reels that really came across. I mean, you use like, pure data like in your Unity
Yeah.
reel, which is not
Yeah.
something that is like very common for people working like, within that system. So just to show that you like obviously had the creativity, but that creativity comes through not just in, you know, the sound design and the music, but then also like on the implementation, which to me is actually like it's actually all one thing. It's like it's interactive audio. So
Hmm,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Okay, this is from Alejandro. What advice would you give to yourself if you were just starting the Wise course again?
That's a very tough question. Uh, Yeah, uh, see it as a full-time job and dedicate 8 hours a day if you can. Like really, really, it's a good opportunity. Leonard is super available always to answer emails. I know that every day I had like, okay, these are the questions I'm gonna ask Leonard, and then I send them the night, and the day after he already had I already had a reply on my mail. So it's a very valuable tool, and just yeah, use Leonard's knowledge. That's
Yeah.
my suggestion.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I start out the course with, where as soon as a person sends in their video, I'm just like, the way to get the most from the course is to ask a lot of questions. And, the hidden thing there is smart questions. I don't want people asking me like, like stuff that's in the manual. It's just like those things, spend, at least do your Google due diligence, like look it up first
Mm.
and then try and read it. But also don't be stuck. Don't waste your time where you're just like, I totally don't understand this and I need some help. So yeah, and that's the thing is that once again, like, yeah, the questions that you had were great. And then when, like, I think it was, yes, in the Unity course, especially because for you, it was a new area, but also you were like very, yeah, curious about all the things. So you had tons of questions, and then I would send back tons of answers. So that's once again, that's a thing that a lot of people don't see, and they don't understand that the course is it's sure it's the stuff in the Moodle. That's fine. There's you can just go through the basics, but the people that really do well, that continue on in the industry are people that pull in and ask for more and more and more. Those people that are hungry like that, those people will do well in the industry. And it's not just time, it's effort, it's spending, yeah, like you say, the core thing, it's like a full-time job. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also passion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all of us that we are into this because we like games and we like music. I don't know the first person that their parents told him, "Hey, you have to study game audio." So, I mean, there's no reason to not put a lot of passion on it and try to, you know, make the best reels you can, and yeah, the best work as well once you're in a company or doing freelance job. Yeah, put a lot of passion and time. Shouldn't be hard
Mm-hmm.
for us.
Yeah, here's a question from Mark asking, what percentage of time would you say you spend working on creative sound assets versus implementing those sounds in your day-to-day work?
Okay. Yeah, I'll say probably it's like okay, let's say 15% of the time creating a sound design, like audio assets, 30% music, because it takes longer to create music. Let's say another, that's 45. Okay, 25% implementing, and the rest, which will be, I think, 30.
Yep,
Okay,
that's
I
right.
lost my.
Yep.
Will be a lot of meetings and managing stuff, some like teamwork and some stuff that is not it necessarily audio related. It is, but from a like a high level perspective on the teams, on how we work with the dev teams and all that, which is also an interesting part. But yeah, it was something completely new for me coming from a freelance environment to do those tasks as well. So it's a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that just for that's just your particular role. Everybody's role within the industry is different, be it company
Yeah.
structure, whatever games they're working on. It's sort of it's variable. Um, yeah, I guess a question that we have these days is like the question about remote work. So, like, say, both on the hiring side and then also maybe what you've seen at other companies, sort of how do you see the role of like remote work as far as people being able to, apply to jobs and say work? I don't know with your company if you can work remotely or if you've seen, other people that in the industry that work remotely, but how do you see like the sort of the future of remote work and how that might influence people that are taking the course right now?
Yeah, we work quite remotely.
Mm-hmm.
The company is in Australia. So, but I know they before COVID they were working in an office, and there are some downsides and but some good sides in both options. Um, yeah, I don't think that there's any problem per se, like working remotely, other than like probably syncing in time zones and delay in meetings or internet problems. I would always like to have like a real live conversation, especially when it comes to audio. If you have your teammates who are also music expert or audio experts, and you can tell them, "Hey, come here," and you press play, and they see your project, and then they say, "Oh, mute this. Okay, what is this? Oh, I like. Can you raise the volume of this?" That's something that in remote work is completely lost, and that's a shame.
Hmm.
But yeah, I guess that times have changed, and some companies will prefer to have all the workers there. So, and I have seen both options, like probably 50-50
Hmm.
in job offerings. They want remote, some others don't. Some others want remote, but in the same country.
Right.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Some do the same time zone. And yeah, on one hand, it's nice that it opens up the possibility, say, for people from different countries to, join studios. But then the disadvantage is that, of course, you're competing with a larger section of the population
Mm.
because there's just simply similar, like, if you can join in, then other people can too. And then also, it's not just the fact of like, you also have to have the infrastructure as well to be able to like have a fast internet connection, like you say, be able to transfer the files. The time zone thing can be a difficulty on the eco project. There's, we have 40 developers, they're all distributed, so setting meeting times is actually kind of tricky. And yeah, it's also difficult sometimes to know when people are available or when they're not. But
Mm. Yeah.
yeah.
I guess that, yeah, it's true that you're competing with more people, but also
Hmm.
there are more offerings that you can apply to.
That's right.
And from what I see, like working remotely and with other people that also works remotely, is that if you have like this very rich mix of cultures of the people from different places, you're gonna get more it's like more uh, opinions, like different opinions on things. Like the way I compose music as a South American person is going to be completely different to the way an European or an Australian person composes music. So a team made of people from three different parts of the world might be potentially more creative, or can come with more different new things. Uh, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
that's a good point on remote working, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that well, we're nearing the end of the hour here. So I think it looks like we're all wrapped up with questions, which is good. And so I think we can just close on that to say that also that is a huge reason why I did the school is to basically bring more diversity of, people and thought and cultures into, game audio and just the game industry in general, because it has been focused in a few, how do you say, areas which, the first person shooter paradigm is, it's kind of like the summer blockbuster. It's, it's good, but there's definitely so many other possibilities, that are possible within, like, interactive media. So for me, that's where my excitement is with working with the school and having people join in. So yeah, thanks so much for everybody joining us. And yeah, many thanks to you, Ricardo Pujol, for joining us. Really appreciate your time. And yeah, thanks.
Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks, Leonard.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining in. All right. Well, until next time. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye bye.